We all know how awful cigarette smoking is, but out of the approximately 6.5 trillion cigarettes that are sold around the world each year, only an estimated one-third actually make it into the trash. While most of the cigarette burns away, trillions of cigarette butts are left over and usually just get casually flung out the window or into the streets. People have been smoking for millennia, but with the invention of the automatic cigarette rolling machine at the end of the 1800s, production drastically increased, and so did demand because people loved the ease and availability of the new cigarette. This started the cigarette on its path to popularity. Then in 1954, R.J. Reynolds Tobacco Company introduced Winston, the very first filtered cigarette, which achieved massive success in the marketplace. Cigarette butts are toxic plastic pollution and the most littered item on the planet. They are made of a plastic called cellulose acetate. When introduced into the environment, they not only release plastic toxins, but they also release nicotine, heavy metals, and a multitude of other dangerous chemicals that they've absorbed into the surrounding environment. Since the 1980s, cigarette butts have accounted for 30 to 40% of all litter found in coastal and urban areas, and the billions that still remain in our ocean are incredibly hazardous to marine life, which they mistake for food floating on the sea surface. The leaching chemicals from cigarette butts are also toxic to other aquatic organisms such as bacteria, crustaceans, and worms. And it's not only sea life that's endangered. Used filters contain thousands of chemicals that are known to kill plants, insects, rodents, fungus, and other life forms with their well-known carcinogens, including people. Sometimes they are found whole in wild animals such as birds and turtles. Additionally, each year there are many reports of young children and pets being poisoned by swallowing used cigarette butts. Ingestion can cause vomiting, convulsions, and in some cases death. Scientific evidence shows that cigarette butts break down and become microplastics. Their toxins eventually get into everything, including our water and food sources. Even though we've known the damage they cause to plants for over 100 years, this remains a very under-researched or widely publicized issue, in large part thanks to the tobacco companies. And given the importance of plants as our primary food source and their role in our environment, clearly there is a need to reduce cigarette butt pollution. Some have suggested banning the filters outright, claiming that the health benefits are only minimal anyway, and they are mostly there for appearance and don't do enough to justify their existence. In fact, there has been evidence that the chemicals in the filters themselves may actually increase cancer risks. It's fruity or minty, it freshens your breath, it's fun to chew, you can blow bubbles with it, and it contains up to 80% plastic. This may be hard to believe, but it's true. Manufacturers tend not to disclose this ingredient because chewing on plastic doesn't sound particularly appetizing. And they don't have to. The reason is the exact ingredients in their gum bases are considered to be trade secrets. Therefore, they can use non-specific terms such as gum base, making it hard for consumers to know exactly what they're chewing on. What I do know, however, is that most gum bases contain polyethylene, a plastic that's used to make plastic bottles and plastic bags. Gum bases also tend to contain polyisobutylene, a rubber that's used to make car and truck tires. These ingredients are nearly indestructible in nature, and we're willingly and unknowingly putting them into our bodies. Polyethylene is considered safe, even though the FDA has issued warnings about it, and it has been shown to leach esoteric chemicals that are harmful to kids, the exact demographic that gum is marketed to. This is made worse because many children, especially younger ones, swallow gum or wad more than one piece in their mouth at the same time, getting a large dose. Of course, it wasn't always like this. Companies started using plastics in their gums in the 1960s when it became more economical to use man-made synthetic ingredients. 80 to 90% of chewing gum is not disposed of properly, It's the second most common form of litter after cigarette butts. And just like cigarette butts, the polymers in chewing gum are synthetic plastics which do not biodegrade. So when it gets tossed, it just sits there leaching its chemicals until it's removed, which can be costly and time consuming. Also, chewing gum is not digestible, not for humans or any living creature in the air or sea. Birds, especially young ones, have died after eating chewing gum. So how long does it take for the earth to recycle gum? To be completely gone, about 500 years, because the rubber-like material gum is typically made from won't decompose without assistance from natural causes like rain and bacteria. Chewing gum is a worldwide problem that costs business and taxpayers millions of dollars a year to clean up. Some countries like Singapore have already started to crack down on bubblegum, banning it unless you have a medical reason to be chewing it. And the worst is nicotine gum. But even without a government ban, it is possible to be a responsible gum chewer. Look for the natural biodegradable gums that do not contain synthetics like Glee gum, Simply gum, or Tree Hugger gum, which you can get at Whole Foods, Amazon, and many other places. We all know that plastic is wreaking havoc on the environment, but did you know the largest plastic polluter in the United States by far is your washing machine? Every time you do laundry, your clothes release hundreds of thousands of tiny synthetic fibers called microfibers. They go down the drain, pass through our water treatment plants because they're too small to be filtered out, and end up directly in our waterways, our drinking water, and beyond. In the United States, tests have shown these toxic plastics have shown up in 94% of our nation's drinking water. Plastic doesn't biodegrade, it just fragments into smaller pieces. These tiny pieces comprise up to 35% of primary microplastic pollution that's in our oceans because they get directly released into the environment. Recent research proves that we are eating and drinking plastic at almost every meal. The consequences of this pollution could be disastrous to animals and humans. Not only are they toxic to aquatic wildlife, but they act like little sponges soaking up the toxins that are already in the water. Then they get ingested by sea creatures. When wildlife ingests these microfibers, the harmful chemicals are released into their bodies. Then the toxins just keep going up the food chain until we finally consume them. And I don't mean in just seafood. Land animals are fed this water, and we use this water to grow plants. So every particle of food we ingest is potentially contaminated by these toxins. One study found that New York State deposits about 150 million microfibers into the Hudson River each day, which then goes out into the Atlantic Ocean. And that's just one river. If you think about how many rivers empty into the Earth's oceans, you'll quickly realize the enormity of this problem. Synthetic materials used in clothing and textiles such as polyester, acrylic, and nylon represent about 60% of the clothing material worldwide. Out of this 60%, the most popular is polyester. This man-made material is highly popular and usually chosen by the fashion industry because of its availability, durability, resistance, and affordability. Another problem is just by wearing synthetic clothes, plastic fibers are constantly released into the air. Inhaled plastic microfibers may persist in the lung and as a result could cause inflammation. As with many other plastics, this could lead to long-term health effects, including reproductive problems, cancer, and DNA damage. It seems impossible to avoid these items made with plastic fibers because even clothes that we think are safe, like cotton t-shirts, often are synthetic blends, so you have to be careful and read labels. Another way to help this problem is not to do your laundry as often or purchase a filter for your washer. Or you could start by just buying sustainable clothing brands that only use natural fibers such as organic cotton. So what can we do now? In addition to considering an all-out ban on cigarette filters, many states are considering a cigarette butt deposit program in which manufacturers are forced to offer money in exchange for returned butts. However, this legislation has been proven to be problematic and difficult to pass. TerraCycle is actually conducting a cigarette recycling research program where once collected, the cigarettes and packaging are separated by composition and melted into hard plastic that can be remodeled into new recycled industrial products such as plastic pellets. The ash and tobacco are separated out and composted in a specialized process. It's still in its test stages, but it looks promising. For the gum problem, new companies like Gumdrop Limited have found a new way to recycle chewing gum into a large range of new products, including shoes, coffee cups, guitar picks, brushes, and more. TerraCycle also sells zero-waste boxes used to collect used chewing gum to be recycled, sold, and then made into other products. For the laundry problem, products like Guppy Friend, which is a bag you can wash your clothes in that collects a large portion of the fibers, or Cora Ball, which is a ball that you throw into your machine with the wash and it collects a portion of these harmful fibers that you can dispose of before they get into the water system. One quick note, please remember when disposing of your masks to remove the elastic bands. Thank you.